welcome to today's podcast. It's the first one of 2020, and I'm joined by Mordy Oberstein. Hopefully I pronounced that properly, Mordy.
Oh, you're good. You're good. No worries.
So Mordy is based in Israel and works with RankRanger, and I'm sure you've heard this podcast before. I appeared on it probably halfway through last year. Great podcast, a lot of fun.
Episode.
Yeah, and it was actually one of my favourites purely because we were sitting having a beer at your expense on a hot summer's night basically on the middle of the ocean in Tel Aviv, which was quite a cool little place. So I really enjoyed that one. Most of the other ones are done in dungeons and at home. And stuff like that. So, yeah, it was a good episode. But how are things in Mordy World?
Mordy World is always crazy. Do you really want to get into it?
Yeah, why not?
Not really? No, I'm just super busy, which is problematic. I don't know. I don't know how to balance my life well at this point because there's just so much going on, which I guess is a good thing. And then I have 4 kids to go with that, which I guess is a good thing. You just say, No, we had twins. We had twins to start off, so that you go from 0 to 60 right away with twins.
Oh man, I didn't realize you had 4 kids. One's enough.
I try to forget too.
So
I have 8-year-old twins, and then I have a 3-year-old, and I have a 1.5-year-old.
Man. That those gaps as well is just you get over it, then you're getting back into it, then you go over it again, and then you're back into it.
Right. The last 2 are sort of like Irish twins.
Fuck.
But we're not Catholic, so. Well, I mean, in case you can't tell by the name Mordy Oberstein, I'm not Catholic.
Yeah.
Right.
He is an American Jewish guy that stays in Israel.
That's it. That you've summed up my entire life in 5 seconds.
And you still remind me of that guy from American Pie. I don't know why. And I think he was also Jewish.
Eugene Levy, like the father? Don't tell me I remind you of the father.
Well, you actually do remind me a bit. The voice sounds a bit like the father, but the guy, Jason Biggs, I think his name is, or whatever it was. I don't know, your face, your accent do sound very much like him.
I don't know why. He's famous, so it's in a movie. Yeah, I'll take it.
It's not bad. I could have said a lot worse. Yeah,
could be exactly. Could be a lot worse. Let's not go there either.
So before we talk about anything in the SEO world, how's the old podcast going? Is that still going strong?
Yeah. The In Search SEO podcast. New episodes every Tuesday. A little plug for that. You can find on Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, the RankRanger blog, iTunes. It's going really well, actually. We have a new series coming out called Women in Search, because you get it, In Search SEO podcast. Because what happened was I get a lot of recommendations for guests. Like someone like yourself comes on my show, and then someone such as yourself is nice enough to send me somebody else, and then they send me somebody else, and it's great. I don't want to do too much work, but it ended up turning into a sausage fest.
Yeah,
where just guy after guy after guy. I'm like, wait, I should have some diversity here. So I put in a tweet. I'm like, all right, are there any women in search who would like to come on my podcast? And the response was overwhelming. So I have 3 months of interviews set up with just women. Which is great.
Yeah, no, I was kind of conscious with that, starting out the podcast, and I think the first 10 or 15 episodes was all guys. And then I was like, oh, you better get a few females on here.
By the way, women are much better interviews than men, I find.
Yeah, there's a lot of good women in the digital marketing industry for sure. I think it's one of those things. I'm not ever going to do 3. I don't think I'd ever do 3 months with just women only. But trying having a nice mixed view is the best way. 3 months is it's a good stretch for you. But
I like it. I think it.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
It's just how it worked out, which is great.
Yeah,
I like when things work out.
do it any old way, as long as you get the guests on and keep the content going. Then
gotta keep going. It's a grind.
Yeah, it is.
And then it's not the only thing we do, right? The podcast is one of the many things we do.
Exactly.
And it's you're just grinding, how to get it all done.
it's it's just a juggling act, isn't it? It's just but if people are listening, you've got to do it and try and keep consistent with it. So that's good that it's still going strong. And I've had to listen to a few of the episodes. And yeah, all seems to be going well. I liked my episode. It was really good. It sounded really good on it, really professional.
Very professional. Where'd you get that mic from?
Yeah, that mic was real good.
That was good.
I've actually finally got the mics that you suggested. I don't know. I thought with the podcast with you, it was really cool that you were able to, have the headphones on and monitor it. It just sounded really good, and you could kind of hear the tone of your voice. So yeah, it was a good setup there.
Particularly if you're narcissistic and you like hearing the sound of your own voice, it's perfect.
That's exactly what I am, and I've never thought of that until now. But yeah, it just sounded really cool. You're sitting listening to me waffling a load of shit while I was on the 5th or 6th beer or whatever. But
I was on my 5th or 6th bourbon at that point.
Anyway, on to the world of search, which is what we all do. So you're not just Mordy, the podcast guy or the RankRanger guy or anything like that. There's a bit more to you than that. You've got to earn your keep somehow, and as much as your voice is good, you've got to have some other skills. So what is it you do on a day-to-day basis in terms of SEO? What is your strength?
I'm like the Jack Ryan of SEO.
Jack
Ryan. If you remember, like those Tom Clancy movies with Harrison Ford. What the heck was it? Patriot Games, and can't remember the other ones. Man, I can't believe I'm like a movie person. I'm like it's like spazzing on the name of the movie. But then you have it now with the guy from The Office on Amazon, Jack Ryan, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So I'm an analyst. I mean, he gets to go shoot people and jump off buildings and whatever, but I'm essentially an analyst. I don't work on websites, generally speaking. We do it on our own a little bit. We have an SEO team for that. I generally am an analyst. I analyze what's going on with a lot about the core updates, a lot about algorithm updates, SERP features, Google strategy, what's going on under the surface. I'm an analyst. I'm a glorified talking head analyst.
So when, for example, this core update that came out in November, which everyone whines about, I think it was like the 6th or the 8th.
September,
or was it September?
Yeah, there was a local update confirmed in November. Mm-hmm. But that was a weird one because it was Danny Sullivan came out. It was after a whole month of people, what's going on. We try to analyze it. There's a lot of weird movements, like micro movements going on. It was Joy Hawkins in the local world who actually predicted it. It was really cool. She said, it seems that there's something going on with local rank where it's not about proximity. It's about your relevancy to the query, to the your business entity being relevant. And it turns out after a month of this going on and people were like, what in the world is happening here? Google came out and said, we've added neural matching to the world of local. So now if you're a business who maybe your entity name, your business name, or your business description isn't as precise as it should be or could be for this particular query, mm-hmm. we're able to understand it and say, okay, really you are related to this query and you are relevant. And all of a sudden, all these other new entities or other new businesses rather started ranking in the local pack and organically, and it shifted the local rankings around a lot. And Joy Hawkins basically called it like a month before it actually was confirmed by Google. But the last core update was in September.
Mm-hmm.
So we have like a ton of data, which is like great. Being RankRanger is one of the SEO tools, so we track millions and millions of keywords.
Yeah.
So finding patterns is a little bit less of a pain in the ass for me than it is for other people.
Well,
it's an enormous pain in the ass.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question: is how does someone like you analyze and come up with conclusions to updates? But I'm assuming it is because of the sheer volume of data you've got, you're able to easily see. Because, like, the reason I thought there was a November update is I've got a few Amazon affiliate websites which were hit quite badly in November, and no one can figure the fuck what went on.
Right.
And it's now recovering, and I've not really done anything.
That's interesting. November was a really weird month, by the way.
But I've also got this problem with that website where it's also seasonal. So it's a golf website, and are people buying golf stuff in November as well? So I'm not entirely sure how much of an impact I really had from that update, but there certainly was a fairly big dip. But in terms of September, things were okay on my sites. But it's interesting to hear from guys like you who got that data. But I'm assuming that all of the kind of conclusions you come up with are through the data that you've got access to.
Yeah, well, it's complicated. So first, by the way, it's interesting that you say that. Like, September was fine for me. November was crazy because we did see a lot of movement. Google often does more than one thing at a time. So yes, they confirmed the local side of November, but there was a lot of when we looked at it, we saw there was a lot of swings, like ginormous, 20 position swings in November, not related to local. But there were also a lot of like smaller micro movements happening at the same time. I wrote about this at some point. I don't remember where I wrote about this. Which was interesting. But then you have the core update where you weren't hit, which is like, well, everybody's getting hit by the core update. And it's part of, I actually wrote about this with Search Engine Land a few months ago, where I compared some of the unconfirmed updates that Google rolls out to the confirmed core updates. And some of those unconfirmed updates are just as impactful as the core updates. So like you should get so hung up, oh, Google confirmed it, therefore it's big. No, it's big because it's, it threw your rankings into a tizzy. That's why it's big, not because Google confirmed it. Which is like, it's again like SEO sometimes like we're like very like linear, like, oh, well, Google said it was big, so it must be big, as opposed to actually looking at, you have data on this, right? You track your own website, so just take a look at your own site. But that's sort of the problem. Like you just mentioned it yourself, like, yeah, we have like an affiliate and this kind of site, and are people buying golf gear in December? Are people buying golf gear ever? But okay, I hate golf, but but it makes it. Sorry, I had to throw that out there. It makes it complicated when you're trying to find. So you have all the data, right? And you can, if you wanted me to analyze a niche and say, okay, which niche was impacted more than another niche, I can do that. It's pretty easy. You can train a monkey to do that. Probably not, but it's relatively easy for me at this point. I have it by rote. It's finding out why what's happening is going on. That's where the ingenuity of Morty comes in, and finding site level patterns. So you have the data. That's nice, but in terms of actually abstracting out and figuring out, okay, where are the patterns at the site level? What do I see commonalities between these sites and those sites? That's really hard. It's really annoying. And when an update happens, the first thing in my mind is like, oh, crap, I got to do this again. But going through and finding those patterns is very hard. But what's interesting is with the unconfirmed updates, it's nearly impossible. I mean, every once in a while you get an update, and Glenn Gable come out and say, yeah, I think it's related to thin content or blah, 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 blah. That hasn't really happened in a while. With the core updates, though, and this makes a lot of sense to me, and it's funny that Google says there's nothing to do, but with the core updates, I've found, at least for myself, finding those site-level patterns has been a lot easier. Not to say that it's easy. There are updates where I think it was the March 2019 core update. I couldn't figure anything out, which is all right. It happens. I feel like a failure, but it happens.
Yeah.
But with other updates, not.
Yeah, I think obviously trying to figure out those patterns is sometimes very, very easy. But with the amount of changes Google does, and some of them are subtle, it is a little harder to figure out.
Or they tack things on, one thing on top of another thing. It was one of the core updates, I think it was March. They tacked on the change in diversity at the top of the SERP, where they didn't want to show some, right? So was I hit by that? Are my rankings changing because of that? Or my ranking changing because of the update itself? And blah, 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 blah. So there's one thing on top of another thing. It makes figuring it out very difficult sometimes.
Do you think, though, obviously guys like yourself who are analytical like that can sometimes jump the gun with changes, trying to resolve these issues? Yes. Because as I said there, the Amazon website that I've seen have a bit of a dip in November. I've not really done anything since. It's just kind of settled down, and I know other friends and stuff that start adding schema or anything that's a part of their website that they've not maybe ticked the box with. they go out and start doing all these crazy ass changes, and then they start saying, "Oh, schema, I've added schema now. My website's recovered, and schema's the best thing since sliced bread, and all this kind of crazy shit." And schema's just an example, by the way. I'm not saying that someone actually done that, but you know what it's like. People go gung ho with changes, and sometimes can give themselves a bigger problem. Is that something you feel happens a lot, or how do you react to these changes? Do you sit back, see how things pan out, or do you go all out and just start changing shit up?
No, you shouldn't start changing shit up. I mean, okay, there's a lot that goes into this. First off, if you're hit by a core update, it's pretty clear that you're hit. Like, you were doing okay, and sudden, boom, one day you're gone. Which, those are, if you're hit by a core update, I haven't seen those rebound the same way as a regular update, which is interesting in itself, and I could go into why I think that makes sense. But there are many, many times where I'll track the visibility of a site, and you'll see it go up 3 months, then it goes down. 3 months later, it goes back up, and that sort of makes sense, because what happens is, at least the way I see it, is Google's testing something out, right? It says, okay, now we think we can understand the web this way. We have this new, let's say, machine learning property. Let's test it out and see if this works. And what do we get? Well, that didn't work out well. Let's return things to where they were before, and we call that a reversal. So no, you have to think long term with these things. Like, track it over time. You have to be patient. You have to see what's going on. Again, if it's core update and you get hit, you see, like, okay, there's a major hit. It's a core update. Okay, so like, that's something you should look into. But by the way, with the core updates, and I believe Google, when they say this, I think it was Gary Ilyish. I always mess up his name. I think it's how you say it. It doesn't really matter. Who cares? You should have an easier last name. He said, it's not about links. And it's not about links. I really, when it comes to those massive updates, I very much think, like, focusing, it's links, it's this, it's that, it's this, is definitely the wrong way to go. This is a change to the algorithm overall. It's very purposeful. It's very well thought out, and it's very holistic. Like, I love this about the SEO industry. Sometimes we'll sit back and like, wow, Google did this. They changed the knowledge graph. Now they can understand entities this way. Now they can make these connections. Now they can make those connections. Wow, look at all the wonderful things Google's doing and understanding things like a human. Then an update hits, and then what do we say? Links. Like, we totally forget the larger context of everything that's been happening for the last 6 months and just go back to links. That makes sense. Are you an idiot? Like, I don't understand. Like, you in the same breath, you said Google's got really good at this. They have a new ability to do X, Y, and Z. But I'm going to totally disregard that when it comes to analyzing an update.
Yeah. One thing you did say there, and is very often the case with updates, Google release some kind of statement saying they've done this or done that, a month or two down the line. How much of that is accurate, in your opinion?
I don't. It's a good question. Let's take with they say about the core updates. They say, like, write relevant content, write good content, right? Over and over again, same message. So is that a lie? Like, there's nothing going on there? You could say, like, well, wait a second, Mordy's writing all these posts about, well, I saw this pattern, I saw that pattern, I saw that pattern. But when I say pattern, I don't mean like links or whatever. I'm talking like a very holistic pattern, like Google's getting better understanding language this way, or Google's getting better understanding sites as an entity this way. So you say, oh, well, Google's lying, because there are things you could be doing in theory, right? I don't think it's lying, or you want to lying by omission. It's really just, I think they're speaking in vague generalities. Like, yes, you should write more relevant, better content. Okay, that's nice, but what does good content mean now versus before the update? They can mean very different things, right?
Yeah.
So that's not a lie. It's not being very specific.
Yeah, but one man's good content is another man's piece of garbage. It's all down to interpretation and stuff like that. But I get what you're saying. It's obviously Google want good content, and that's never changed. I don't think the core of SEO has really changed. It's obviously evolves with site speed and technical stuff and schema and knowledge graphs and all that kind of stuff all been implemented, and you've obviously got to optimize towards that. But I don't think there's only so much Google can say in terms of do a good job of your website without, and people are just looking for them to give out the golden, some golden magic bullet thing.
Right, it's not happening.
It's going to tell everyone how to rank, which they're never going to do. But I kind of agree with you what you're saying there. They've got to be general about it. Otherwise, what else can they say? Their hands are tied to
It's
some
also, it might
degree.
just be too complicated to a certain extent. Like let's say I analyze an update and I found, I think it's a September update. I found that loan sites that were using marketing type of language within their content didn't do well. They lost a lot of ranking, which makes sense.
Yeah.
If you're a YMYL site, like a finance site offering loans, and you want to describe what a small business loan is, you should be very informational about it. Don't try to sell me something.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one
Uh,
pattern, but there's probably a million patterns.
yeah.
So what's Google
And
going to say? Yeah, it's this pattern, this one. You could be here for forever.
exactly. So what pattern do we follow then,
I don't know. It depends
in
on your
your
site.
opinion?
I mean, I'll tell you like this: like you can read what I write. It might apply to you. It might not apply to you. I say this with every update whenever I analyze one. One, this is one very very small sliver of what's happening, and this is one piece of the pie. I'd rather you focus on the method that I'm using, which I try to lay out, than actually one of the patterns that I'm talking about. Though they are important.
Mm-hmm.
Because you could take what I'm writing about and apply it across the board. Like in this case with the loan sites, right? So if Google's saying if you're a loan site and you're using marketing language like this is a great loan for you, blah 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 blah. Okay, so you can understand how you might apply that across the board. Okay, Google's looking at my tone. I need to figure out what tone is appropriate for my vertical. Okay, that's a general point you can apply everywhere. But really, what you should be doing is, you're hit by an update, track who won, who lost. It should be if you're tracking your rankings, if you're tracking the SERP, if you know who your competitors are, okay, so the number one guy was this before, the number one website now is this one. Well, what happened? What does this website have is different from my website? Why did they jump up? Then I lost. And I don't mean like, okay, you can focus on your technical aspects of it and your links, and you should. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but take a look at it holistically, because I think SEO and marketing have finally caught up a little bit, which makes sense, right? Marketing always speaks to people, right? And SEO we speak to machines. But now Google, the machine, is trying to think like a person. So marketing and SEO are sort of caught up a little bit, which is why you hear
Yeah.
people talking about intent and thinking a little more holistically about their content and that sort of thing, because Google's trying to be like a person and marketing is like a person. So you should be thinking about marketing and less about SEO as you might define it like a couple of years ago. And
Yeah.
I think that as that happens, as you start looking at things more holistically and you start analyzing your site, saying, okay, there's this site won, I lost. What latent messages does my site send to the user? What messages does their site send to the user? Well, their site is structured, I have a ton of internal links pointing you to product pages where I'm trying to sell you something, and they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that tells the user, I don't know if I really want to trust you so much because you're just trying to get me to buy something, right? You're writing all this content, you're linking to your product pages over and over and over again. You're really trying to get me to buy something, and I don't really know if I trust your content so much. Versus that guy, that website, they have their CTAs, they have their internal link to the product pages, but it's done very tactfully.
Yeah.
So that's a different message to the user. I would approach it more like, what message does your site send to the user, whether it be the UX, the UI, the content itself, that sort of thing.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think for me, with SEO, it's always about using your common sense as well. And you being able to use a bit of common sense and try and piece, different things together. And especially when you said, back in the day when people used to spam the crap out of it and overuse keywords on pages and stuff. And obviously Google have now caught up, and, it is all about, or a bit more about user experience and less about spamming the shit out of things. I think if you use that common sense approach, you're going to do a hell of a lot better. And it's something I've always tried to do.
Yeah.
Just try and use a common sense approach to anything. Don't be, too crazy, too SEO about things, if you like, too spammy, because it's never good to read. But another question I've got for you on updates. So obviously you've been in this. How long have you been in this industry for?
5 years.
5 years. So you've been in this industry long enough to be able to tell us what was the most bastard of an update. Which one had the biggest impact on any projects you were working on, and or which one did you never really figure out what they actually done?
Which one I haven't figured out as easy as BERT. I'm still trying to figure out where that fits in. I think it's a little more complicated than people realize because, for example, BERT is a Q&A model. BERT is it's an entity recognition tool. So BERT is a lot of things that people don't really realize that it does do. And I think people try to oversimplify BERT a little bit, like, oh, well, BERT means you get to write more relevant content. Okay, yeah, BERT does produce that effect, and you might say it might directly produce that effect in a question and answer format, like a featured snippet. But BERT really just speaks to Google understanding the query better, and now it can use things like RankBrain to show more relevant results. Like these sort of things get oversimplified, and what we do with these sort of things, like, okay, so it came out, it's a big deal, and it's going to do X, Y, and Z. But we don't think about it like long term. Like, why don't we let this thing develop a little bit? See where Google's going to apply it. Like, for example, Google applied it to the top stories carousel. Like they're starting on mobile at least to subclassify the stories. So if you look for I don't know, like football, I mean like American football, sorry, soccer. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Is it football? Is it soccer? I don't know. Let's say baseball, whatever it is. It's easier. And you have a carousel about major trades in baseball and all the news stories about trades happening in baseball, and then I'll have a story about the a carousel underneath that now, which will say something like upcoming happenings in baseball now, news about that, about the upcoming season, whatever it is. And Google said they're using BERT, which I love that name. They're using BERT to sort of identify where one article topic begins, like where one story begins and where one story ends. And it's taken me a while to sort of wrap my mind, like, how does that apply to BERT? Okay, so I have a whole theory, like how I think that actually applies to BERT, because that doesn't seem off the cuff to anything to do with BERT. Which is what I mean. Like, Google will take these things and apply them in ways that we don't really understand or haven't really thought of yet. As opposed to saying, here's the impact of something like BERT. Let's wait. Let's see how it goes. Let's see where Google applies it, how Google applies it, and analyze it after the fact, sort of thing. So the thing I understand is BERT. I'm like, it's there's a lot there that we haven't seen yet, and a lot yet that we haven't had the chance to process yet, because we don't know how Google's really going to use it yet. In terms of an update that I think is like the biggest one, I don't know if there's I don't know if I can say like this was the most impactful update, because again, it might hit your site, it might not hit your site. I would say like the one that stands out to me the most is the Medic update. That was August 2018, and not because it was necessarily bigger than other updates, though at certain positions it was. At the top position, for example, and particularly in the health niche, which is why I think the name Medic makes sense, even though people don't like it so much. Medic destroyed top rankings like no other update I've ever seen before.
And in a very lucrative niche as well.
Yeah. I mean, it just I can show you a trends graph where like you can see other updates and how they've they've dropped down the site's rankings or visibility, whatever you want to measure it. And you can look at Medic at other positions, but that top position for the health industry, it's like the biggest damn drop I've ever seen. It's amazing. And at the same
Nah,
I'm gonna cut you off. Sorry.
No, carry on. I was going to say I heard a lot of people screaming about the Medic update, to be fair. That was probably one that I've heard people rant and rave the most about.
It gets a lot. It's like, that's what I mean. Like it's good that there's a ranting and raving about it because it was really impactful. But at the same time, I think we like oversimplify, like, oh, there was a big update, so this is the biggest thing in the world right now. And it not necessarily, depending on where you are, what vertical you're in, what type of site you are, that sort of thing. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe some other small update that Google didn't get any attention from anybody killed you.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, certain updates are impacting certain niches. Certainly the Medic update wouldn't have impacted me because I have nothing to do with that particular niche. So I'm not really going to see anything. But as I say, I know a lot of people make a lot of money in that industry, and I think that obviously highlights the Medic update as well, because more, when money's lost or sites tank in an industry that's making a lot of money, more noise is going to be made. But In terms of updates and names, you mentioned Bert there. Where do you think these names come from?
So that's a good question. Well, BERT makes sense, right? BERT stands for bi-directional. Like I don't remember the rest of it. I'm like terrible at these acronyms. One second. I'll actually look it up for you because I'm a nice person. Here, let's Google it. BERT.
I tell you why I'm asking where you think these come from. I heard the story once, and it was when the Fred update
Yes, that's
came
a
out,
great story.
and
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
you know
Is it the Barry Schwartz story?
I'm not sure if it's the Barry Schwartz one, but it was something along the lines of someone was pressing Gary Ilyes or whatever the hell you call him on where the hell does his name come from, blah, 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 blah. And people kept hassling them, and they were in the office having a few beers, and they just thought, fuck it, Fred, there you go. And it spread like wildfire. Is that the same story?
Similar story. I heard it was, and the way I saw it go down on Twitter was Barry Schwartz just called it Fred.
He just
something
called
like
it
that.
Fred.
He just like decided he's going to name it like Fred. There was a whole conversation with him and Gary back and forth, and Gary said, "Well, we'll call every update Fred." It was like a whole weird, like I don't know, sort of like a lover's quarrel with Barry and Gary. Is the way I saw it. That rhymes, Barry and Gary. And then I was like, there's that crazy crap with I think it was it the Medic update or was it one of the other core updates where they called it Florida 2?
I don't know. I don't know about that
Great
one. I've not heard.
Florida 1 came out because it happened while PubCon Florida was happening. So they called it Florida. And then this other core update also happened when Florida PubCon was happening. So they called it Florida 2, even though the two updates are completely not related. And the best thing about that was that Google said, like, screw this. Like, this is so stupid. I can't believe you guys are doing this. That we're going to start naming these things now for you because you guys are total morons. You're calling it Florida 2 when it has nothing to do with Florida 1, and you're going to confuse the crap out of people. And that's how we got to Google starting to name the core updates.
Yeah.
By the way, BERT stands for bidirectional encoder representations for transformers. That's why I can't remember. The Transformers part I remember because I like Transformers as a kid, even though it has nothing to do with Transformers, the show.
I ain't going to ever remember that. I'll remember the Transformer bit now that you've said it. So if someone says, what was the BERT update about? I'll just say something about Transformers. That'll do for me. But so what is happening in 2020 for yourself and RankRanger and everything else? Is there any kind of cool updates or any cool things you're doing?
First off, I'm speaking in SMX West in February, so you should come to SMX West and hear me speak about this. We go into how you should prevent being hit by the core updates, or how to recover, more how to prevent being hit by the core updates. So if you want to hear more details about that, come to SMX West. It's in California. Why wouldn't you come? RankRanger is we're releasing a brand new enterprise program, which is very cool. So keep an eye out for an announcement end of January, early February time. And that'll be I can't say more than that. It's very secretive.
Come on. Can't even give a little snippet.
You will have access to more help doing enterprise SEO than literally anywhere. We literally looked around at what everybody else is doing because that's what you're supposed to do when you're doing competitive research. And well, no one's doing this, and this. And that seems to be really important. And that would be really helpful because there was a study that showed that a lot of in-house enterprise folk, or even enterprise folk in general, they have very small teams relative to their size, to the size of the sites that they're working on. And we said, we have a way to fix that for you. And you'll hear about that in February, I hope. Yeah.
Nice. Sounds interesting. And any other speaking gigs? Are you doing a lot more this year? Or
I'm not sure yet. I did a couple here in Israel. I have another one coming up here in Israel January 20th, something like that. I should remember the date better because I need to show up. I have the worst memory, so I can't remember acronyms, or I can't remember, I have on my calendar, okay, please remind me an hour before so I get there. We'll see. I'm thinking about, there are some spots that I'm interested in speaking. We'll see how they pan out. The problem is my wife will kill me. I just spoke in October at LavaCon in Portland, Oregon, And that was okay. My father-in-law was here visiting, so that was great. I got to leave, and he got to help my wife out.
That's always a good thing.
You know, like he's not my favorite sometimes, so I got to escape a little bit. I hope he doesn't listen to your podcast. Anyway, by the way, I always on my own podcast, I always make fun of my family because no one listens, so it's great. I hope one day they will, like, you know, like sit down and actually listen to what I'm putting out, because that'd be very bad for me. Anyway, so I spoke in October, and then SMX West came up. I thought my wife's going to kill me, and she was okay with it because we have 4 kids, and she's going to have to watch all of them by herself. And now I'm very hesitant to see what, you know, to do another one after so quickly. So I got to figure it out. I got to buy my wife something nice first, and then I can say, okay, let me pitch to this place.
Yeah, I'd say 4 kids is a
it's almost a handful. Literally, it's almost a handful.
Yeah, I've a lot of hands full. But sadly, Mordy, we are out of time. But it has been a pleasure having you on and finding out a bit more about the real Mordy and not just the podcast guy.
You're not getting the real Mordy. That doesn't happen on air.
Yeah, well, we'll get there one time.
More bourbon, please.
Yeah, just get you a bottle of bourbon and
get it out. That's all it takes.
Sometime. Yeah, you're a cheap
basically. No, bourbon. I like expensive bourbon. I'm not so cheap.
Well, that's still fine. For all the information you're going to drop after you have that bourbon, I'm sure it'll be worth it.
Anytime.
But no, thank you very much for joining me, and I'm sure we will hear from you again at some point in the future.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too.